Welcome to Dr. Roger and Friends, the bright side of longevity, hosted by 3 Ps in a podcast, Doc Roger, Teresa, and Danielle. Thanks for joining us for coffee and conversation. Well, welcome everybody. Teresa has the day off, but we are so excited to be joined by a guest co-host, Lu Cavallaro, and we're particularly interested in talking to Lu today because we read a recent study and it was citing some research that said that older adults were coping with this pandemic better than any other generation. So the Generation Z, Generation Xers were reported not doing well. In fact, 24% said that they were not coping well. So it's interesting for us. I just turned 48 myself, and Lu very proudly told me earlier she is 86. So we want to, and you're right down the middle, Roger, right? So we thought we could share, shed some light on some coping tools, maybe share some stories. So Lu, thank you so much for being here. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lu Cavallaro. I'm the happy wife of Dr. Carl Cavallaro, who was, we've known each other since we were 16 and had 63 years of wonderful marriage, and I'm afraid I lost him 2 years ago. And I have 4 children. We had a 2.5-year-old when he first went into the Army after dental school, and every January we were blessed with a child. So we went over with 1 and came back with 4. So I am a resilient wife, I'll tell you. We have been through it, good and bad, and I agree totally that I think my generation is very resilient. And I can give you a little kind of an example because we have wonderful grandchildren, and we went over to the Netherlands to visit our 27-year-old grandson and his wife who were stationed there or assigned there with Abbott Pharmaceutical on March 5th, and we came back luckily, March 16th, just as COVID hit Europe. And we closed down Barcelona, Spain, literally. So I spent the first 4 months of COVID in Westerville, Ohio. And I got to observe my grandchildren, who are 21 and 24, and all their friends. I got to observe my 56-year-old daughter, her husband, and their friends, and watched how we all coped. And I really do think I coped better than anybody because I had nothing to do. I just sat back and watched everybody, and handling everything. And they gave me the whole basement of their home. So I had my own bedroom, my own living room, my own bathroom, everything. And it was a great experience.
I'll lay you odds that it's much more than you didn't have anything to do that makes you, as ICAA described, much more resilient. I'll bet the experiences of your young life as well as your adult life, I know depression, World War II, certainly I know personally what a career in the military is like, especially when you run around the world. It's not just staying in U.S. urban cities, but it's in foreign countries. And I know what that's about. So could you give us some sort of sense as to what you think those sort of things played as in this resilience that you're showing?
Yes. When we were in Germany, I had some really frustrating experiences trying to get through all of, number one, housing, trying to find a suitable place for our children, and then when they had to renovate all the housing quarters, I had to learn how to be firm with the general as a young captain's wife and telling him you are not going to move families from one place to another. And I could speak up because the line officers probably wouldn't have made it beyond lieutenant or captain if they spoke up. But I could because my husband was in the medical area. And I really learned how to stand up for myself and help us make lemonade out of lemons, no question about it. And I wound up being Military Wife of the Year. I just I'm saying that, but I did way back because I started the volunteer parent program in the school systems there in Germany. I started in our little school, and then it blew up and it went all through Germany, the government schools. And then when I came back here, I'm a retired teacher. And when I came back here, I volunteered, and then I went on to teach and got my master's when we got back in special and learning disabilities. So I ran
at all. Well, as a career military guy with a wife who was with me most of the time, sometimes we were separated. Yeah, I know what that means. So congratulations. That tells us a lot, explains a lot about you, actually.
So, there are people listening to this out there young people in particular, this is the first big thing. Like everything else that came before this is not as big as this pandemic. But that's not true for you, is it, Lou? Can you tell us a story of something that you've gone through that kind of prepared you for what we're going through now?
Well, first of all, I was the second generation of American. My mother got her citizenship when she was 50. She came from New Tadapana, Italy, and I watched her in the difficult times they had because of depression and because of when we had the Second World War with the green stamps, lots of things you folks don't remember, the victory gardens, and how hard they had to work and how special it was. She would save a quarter to get us special little treats, and that was a lot. And I watched this acculturation process go on. I was a little Italian-American girl, and I had to work very hard to do well. I was a very bright student, did very well, but I had to sort of fight my way all the way through high school especially. And then when I went on to college, I felt a little bit more self-assured, and I commuted to college. I had to take a bus, a subway, and then a train to get to school. And I sometimes one of the professors would drive me partway home. And I was very determined. I was going to graduate. I was the first of four, the oldest of four children. I was the first one to graduate college.
And that was very, very difficult at the time, and that was part of your life, and you didn't ask for any of that, but you responded to it, whatever it was, and worked hard. So, we're not saying that life is necessarily just easy for this generation. It's different, and in some ways it's harder than it was for you and I, and even Danielle. But in general, as Danielle said, they haven't had anything like this. Do you have any advice, sort of general advice that you might give to younger people to that might help them get through this time, give them a little resilience?
Maybe I'd give them the advice that I observed with my grandson and granddaughter who were with us in Ohio. They were very involved, and they are very involved with Young Life, and it's a Christian program. And while during COVID, they would go downtown Columbus, Ohio, and feed those kids that couldn't get meals. And every Thursday, my daughter and I were making sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and lots of treats and oranges, etc., and bagging those. And our community got together and we delivered these, not just us. We did 35 of them and another family, etc., etc. and they all went down. There were hundreds of meals that were brought to downtown Columbus. I would say keep yourself occupied with things other than yourself, and don't get yourself isolated with with TV and computer, etc. Get out there and be careful and wear masks and do the things. Be sensible. We had groups together, but we were very careful. When we were outside, we would stay 6 feet apart as much as we could. And you just have to use your own common sense and listen to your gut when you feel like you're in danger, and get out of there. If you get yourself involved in something where you know you shouldn't be, get out of there so you make yourself safe and you don't bring COVID to your grandparents and your parents, etc.
That is a real gem. Think of others, not just yourself. That's a gem that can go a long way, huh, Danielle?
There's like 10 gems in there. So she's like, yeah, having a purpose, think of others, use your common sense, wash your hands, keep your distance, keep yourself safe. Yeah. And just
the garden, get your hands in the garden. That's what we did. I do it here too. Keep yourself busy and enjoy the beauty around us.
Yeah, one thing I know about Lu, so Lu and I are in the meditation group together that meets weekly, the Masterpiece Circle, and that's how we met. So I would probably suggest that Lu, would you agree that mindful pursuits and having that sense of peace and purpose definitely helps you through this time and helps others, do you think?
I think I'm uniquely blessed, as are other people who are in senior living situations. I'm in an independent living facility, and we have everything here. So I just think I am the luckiest of the lucky, because I go swimming in the morning. We have a little pool, and we have water aerobics, and I try to do that 5 days a week. I do yoga. I do Tai Chi. I walk a lot. We started a little garden club here, and it's only a year-old building, and it will be one of the prettiest places in the west end of Richmond, because as new people move in, if they had gardens, we're having them help us dig up some of their favorite plants, and beside the cookie cutter kind of landscaping that's here, we're now bringing their favorite plants and planting them here, so that they take a little bit of their home, because the hardest thing for seniors is to give up their home of 30 or 40 or 60, 70 years. And if we can realize that now we're light as a feather, I feel like I'm ready to fly off somewhere, because I don't have the responsibilities I have that you have in your home, Danielle, and that you still have, Dr. Roger. But I think if we can realize how blessed we all are with whatever situation we're in, and look for the good, and try to keep yourself positive. The power positive thinking is a cliche, but very true.
We're filling up that basket with pearls, aren't we, Danielle?
Yeah, positive thinking, gratitude, mindfulness, being there for others.
One of the things that I do remember when you asked me what helped me to become the person I am today, do you remember the Christopher movement? When I was 9 or 10 or so, I heard about the Christopher movement, and this was the idea of lighting one little candle. If everyone lit one candle, the world would be lit and with light. And I think of all the things in my life, that's one of those little strands that has gone through with me. I've always tried to light my little candle. Sometimes it flickered, and sometimes it blew out, and sometimes I got myself in a heap of trouble, but I kept trucking.
I'd like to go back to something that you said, because I think it's particularly important now about being mindful, because we know the research tells us, and it's very clear, that most of the stress that we are under now, but usually even before COVID, is self-induced, with our chattering mind and ruminating on things, and what if and why not, and what's going to happen, and not being in the moment, being mindful. And so I'm sure that's why you're with Danielle in the Masterpiece Circle. But that's incredibly important. And so being mindful, and it doesn't have to be sitting with your legs crossed or in a chair. You can be in the garden or be in walking or listening to a piece of music or being with a grandchild. Those, as long as you're there and not somewhere else. You found that to be true. I know Danielle does. I mean, Danielle has been my mentor on this. So
be in the moment, to be truly in the moment is the most important thing. And I think in one of your podcasts you mentioned, Dr. Roger, about the fact that the most important time is now, not yesterday and not tomorrow. We have now. We know that now is now. And
I hit my grandchildren with that question a lot, that they know the answer now, but for a while they had to learn it. But what's the most important thing you're doing today? What I'm doing now, Papa. When they say that, I'm very, very pleased.
Yeah, and Doc Roger, you alluded to it when you mentioned as far as choosing, so a lot of times people are going through a lot of stress. And so of course they're not choosing to be unhappy. They're hit with stuff. But what's nice about mindfulness is when you find yourself ruminating and going in that direction, there are other things to consider, like your garden or returning to your breath. Can you explore some other thoughts and things that will kind of bring you peace versus going down that path that's going to make it worse. And it's hard. I do it too. All week, different things happening in the news. And, I have to remind myself, okay, turn the TV off for a little bit, go over here and do something, that kind of brings me peace. So
the best I've heard on that, and I know you know this, Danielle, and perhaps you do, Lou, Eckhart Tolle is an author, and he wrote the book.
My favorite. I love him.
And in that book, you remember, he says, when you're faced with a difficult situation, which could be COVID, there's only three things to do. You either fix it or make a plan to fix it, because that's what our minds are meant to do. Do something, in our stress response, do something. And so to either fix it or make a plan to fix it. Two is to walk away, and we can't do that with us. And the third thing is to accept it. And so I think we're in a situation where we have to accept what is, but that doesn't mean that we give up. That means and fixing it, part of fixing it, I think, is wearing a mask, being social distancing, and physical distancing, not social. We want to be socially connected. Physical distancing and the mask and whatever Dr. Fauci tells us, do that.
Yeah.
I went to undergraduate school with Dr. Fauci, same school, different time, but and I have the greatest respect for him. I think he's our leader relative to information right now.
And Lou, I really liked when you talked about the candle, because it reminds me, I recently interviewed somebody for our company newsletter, and this gentleman had told the story that in his retirement community, he anonymously bought a single rose for everybody on his floor and left it at the door. And it brought people so much joy that he ended up doing it for the entire community and didn't tell them who it was. And he said, and people were making and he said, who knew? Like the single rose was what everybody was talking about. So you never know what that little thing that you do, like making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for somebody, makes a huge difference,
You've given us some great things. You have anything, Danielle? You have another question, or do you have anything to close with?
I was hoping to hear a couple of your gem stories.
I think that one that is particularly good has to do with my wife, who was an Air Force wife. And we were in 23 years together in the military, and now 51 together, married. But just denting what you did there. And this was this has to do with the way she directed me. I worked on base, and we lived off base in Germany, in a small farming town of Wismensdorf, and up near the Luxembourg border. And so I worked all day, really busy, and then I drove home at night, and I walked in the door, and I immediately knew that something was wrong because of the way she was looking at me. And she said, "Where is Jennifer, our daughter?" I was supposed to pick her up at Brownies. And so there she was, abandoned and isolated on base at the Brownies. Hardly. They took care of her, but that's one I never lived down. Whenever she needs a one-upsmanship on me, the Brownie story comes out. So
She just said, "Where's Jennifer?"
I do have a story. We were talking earlier, Danielle, about my experiences getting to Germany. I'll tell you the real story. I was teaching. My mother would take care of Chip, who was 2.5, 4 days a week, and my mother-in-law 1 day a week. They were best friends, and that was taken care of. But every Friday, Carl was sent to Germany, and we were told there was no government housing for us. Well, there really were 3 apartments available, but there was no housing in the headquarters in Bad Cannstatt, Germany. And so Carl got there, and he was very upset because here there was housing, and here the Berlin Wall was coming up, we heard. It was just starting. And here I am, pregnant. After 7 months, if you're pregnant over 7 months, you can't fly back then, 60 years ago. And so as a result, I had to make the decision, what was I going to do? So every week, every Friday, I had to go to check and see if there was a chance for me to be going over. And I would have to walk down this hall, and here I am getting bigger every week for about 2.5 months. And the gal at the end of a hall would say, "Sorry, but there's no availability. You can't fly, can't go." Well, finally, the last day I went, for some reason, I was tired, and I said, "Mommy, will you come with me and take Chip and come for a ride?" I had to go to Brooklyn from Bloomfield, New Jersey, which was like an hour drive. And so she came for the ride. And would you believe, when I was walking down that hall, I could see the woman at the end of the hall not looking very happy to see me. And she said, now she knew me as Lou. She said, "Lou, I hate to tell you, but there's no more dependent flying to Germany because of the wall going up." And I said, "I'm going to go. We had natural childbirth with my son Chip, and Carl will be there with me when I have this next one." And so P.S., I said, she said, you can't go." I said, "I'll pay for myself. I have $500 Social Security because I was leaving teaching. I had $500. I felt so wealthy." And P.S., she said, "Well, let me let you talk to Colonel Brown." So I had never seen a colonel. I only knew my young cousin was a sergeant in the Second World War. That's the only person I saw in a uniform before. And so I went to see this man, and he said, "Young lady, I hear you're not going to accept the fact that you cannot go over to be with your husband in Germany." I said, "Absolutely not. I'll pay my own way. Tell me how to go. What do I have to do?" And he's he's giving me all these arguments about not, and I'm giving all the pros. And he said, "I can't win an argument with my wife. How can I ever expect to win an argument with you?" He said, "All right, Miss Ellis, would you tell this young lady how she's going to get a civilian passport and how to get to Germany from there?" So I wound up going. My mother now was with me with my son. We wound up going, I forget where in Brooklyn I had to go. But anyway, they gave me directions to go to Rockefeller Center to get a passport. And then I went, I got a passport, and then I had to get tickets. I never had flown anywhere out of the country. So we went down, and when I went to the travel agency, they said, "So how do you want to go?" I said, "Well, I'm going to Germany. I'll go on Lufthansa." So I went on Lufthansa, and I was going to start right away. Wound up getting going and paying my way, and I got there with Chip, and sure enough, a week later, they stopped all dependent travel, period, over throughout Europe. And one of the reason I'm saying this, one of our dear friends, one of the young captains, his wife had 3 children, with one of them a very seriously handicapped child. She was in California and he was in Germany, and they couldn't work fast enough to get her over. So, but for the grace of God, I would have been stuck here for 3 years.
Without your husband, 3 years, you would have been stuck apart.
And
wow.
So Carl wound up being with me with every child, and he wound up delivering that second child, Greg, who was born on January 5th because of a German snow. And we were in a little sub-post an hour away from the Army hospital in Bad Cannstatt. And he had a young doc who had never delivered a child since his internship. They wound up delivering Chip in this little sub-post. And so we had quite the adventures.
Remind me never to say no to you, Lou, okay? It's not,
I wouldn't accept no unless it's a real reason for no.
Well, and something, Danielle, that, maybe a lot of our listeners don't understand, that international travel, even without the war, was very rare. I mean, it was very rare. And to do something so young and, not have any idea on how to do it, that show, well, we know the woman's got grit. It showed a lot of grit.
That's an Army wife for you.
Well, it is. And I think it made my children, I'm sure yours, as well as my wife, we were closer because of it, and also very resourceful.
Absolutely.
Navigate through the world. Lou, thank you very much for being with us today. It was an absolute pleasure. And, we talk a lot about human capital, namely the experience and expertise and wisdom that is in our older population and our elders. And we saw an example of that today.
You've been listening to Dr. Roger and Friends, The Bright Side of Longevity. If you like the show, please rate and review, and be sure to click to follow.